BioWare is an old developer responsible for some genuine classics, single-player classics, and they're now working on Anthem, a distinctly multiplayer game. And with EA shutting down a couple of major studios in the past year or so, some are now worried about BioWare's future.
James Ohlen spent 22 years working as BioWare's Senior Creative Director before retiring from his position last month. During his time at BioWare, Ohlen worked on games such as Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Neverwinter Nights, and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Ohlen's last project for BioWare was Shadow Realms, a co-op focused action RPG which was ultimately cancelled by EA due to the poor performance of multiplayer games at the time. In more recent years, Ohlen had been working on Anthem, the upcoming RPG shooter hybrid which is due to come out in February 2019. But after the closure of Visceral Games and BioWare Montreal in the last 18 months, there was some speculation that if Anthem failed to meet expectations, then BioWare would be shuttered as well.
However, during a recent interview with GameInformer, Ohlen said he doesn't believe EA will close BioWare, even if Anthem somehow ends up being a failure. Here's what Ohlen had to say, quote, "I think EA is looking for BioWare to be a long-term part of the company. I think EA really respects what BioWare brings to it. BioWare is a lot different than all the other aspects of its business, so even if Anthem doesn't do as well, and I think it's going to be great, but if it doesn't do gangbusters, I don't think that's the end of BioWare. I think it will simply be a chance for BioWare to learn some lessons and apply it to the next game that comes out." Ohlen also addressed the rumour that EA is forcing BioWare to make Anthem a persistent world online game, saying that BioWare had full control over the project from the beginning. Ohlen added, quote, "BioWare's always had a lot of control over the kind of games it makes." So I don't think BioWare's in any danger at all, personally, and I completely agree with what Ohlen has said there about EA kind of seeing them as this kind of, you know, because if you take BioWare away from what EA does, it kind of looks a lot more lightweight in terms of AAA games all of a sudden, in terms of like big, like what, you know, what the kind of core gamers would be wanting to play. It's a big part of their business, BioWare, I think, and yeah, they might shutter BioWare Montreal, which is one of their studios. No chance of they getting rid of the BioWare brand. I don't think so anyway.
And on the topic of creative freedom, he says that BioWare were in control of where Anthem's going and that EA aren't forcing them to do anything specific. It's really important that BioWare have that creative freedom to make their own choices, make their own mistakes, because if EA just take over, then you're just drones doing someone else's bidding. And so people speculating saying that EA forced them to do this, forced them to do that, it's not true according to him.
It's easy to see why people would say that, you know, that EA is the one kind of controlling and dictating the way that Anthem has gone, because that's kind of, it seems like a businessy type thing. It seems like a businessy type idea to go from single player to be a multiplayer game where, you know, you've got microtransactions and all that kind of shit. It seems like more of a corporate move. I can also see why someone would come out of that environment and go, we've made loads of single player RPGs, we want to try and do one that's a bit different this time. I buy that argument as well, I've got to be honest.
Another question put to Ohlen by GameInformer was the fan reception to Anthem, specifically how the fans felt BioWare was straying from their RPG roots. Ohlen assured that Anthem is not indicative of BioWare abandoning story-driven RPGs. Rather, the studio just want to try something different. That echoes similar sentiments shared by Bethesda's Todd Howard recently amid similar concerns over Fallout 76. On the topic of other key BioWare departures like Drew Karpyshyn and Mike Laidlaw in recent months, GameInformer asked if this was a sign the company was on the way out. Ohlen said this was not the case at all, and most people just wanted a change of scenery after spending 10 to 15 years working for the company. His own departure had actually been planned since April, but he decided to wait until E3 had passed before making the announcement.
Towards the end of the interview, GameInformer asked Ohlen what motivated him to leave BioWare, especially with Anthem being so far into development. Ohlen said he wanted to get involved in more creative stuff again, and in perhaps the most telling quote, here's what he said of his time working on the development of the Star Wars The Old Republic MMO. Quote, "I was the game director, which meant I had the most power, but I often felt like I was the captain of the Titanic, and I could just steer it a tiny bit if I put all my efforts into it." And specifically on leaving the company, he said, quote, "It's a chance to just not have all that responsibility and really just be creative, do what I want to do. Feel a little more like back in the Baldur's Gate days when the team was 40 people in size instead of what it is now."
Ohlen said his role in Anthem's development development was pretty small. He spent 6 months working as narrative director for the game before handing leadership to Kathleen Rootsert. As the interview came to an end, Ohlen took the time to address fans directly, saying, quote, "Just for those people worried, I know that Anthem is looking amazing. I think people will be very surprised when Anthem comes out next year at what they've been able to do with that game. It's got some incredibly talented people working on it, and it's going to be a great experience."
So this is another kind of senior games industry figure, a kind of an executive type almost, with his lead design type career. Basically, he's been in charge of making a lot of great games, not just working on them. And he wants to leave. He wants to leave and do smaller stuff. So it's more like it was back in the olden days, back when he was working on Baldur's Gate. He's in charge of huge projects these days, like with the Old Republic. You don't get much bigger than an MMO built on the Star Wars universe, so trying to dictate the way that goes is probably very difficult. And he's kind of craving that game design, that core kind of game design thing that he used to have, and it sounds like that's why he's leaving. And apparently he's already working on his first kind of post-BioWare project, which is kind of a Dungeons and Dragons-y type guidebook, which is exactly where he's come from. That's what Baldur's Gate 2 is. That's this kind of Dungeons and Dragons love letter type video games, and that's what he's straight away, he's left BioWare and gone back to that straight away.
And with him saying that Anthem is not indicative of the future per se for BioWare, because it's just them trying new things. So I guess hope is still there that maybe they'll return to their roots in future and just do the single player game like they have done in the past.
Do you want to see BioWare going back to what they used to do in the olden days, or are you personally excited to see what Anthem's like? I mean, there's a lot of cool kind of multiplayer shared world games these days. Maybe this will just be another one. Let us know down in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. There should be another video right there if you want to watch that, and a link to Patreon if you want to support the channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.